your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Welcome into Ask Level, the podcast edition, episode number 8, alongside Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. We're here, of course, via Double T 97.3. As always, post-bye week, West Virginia week. Level, how was your bye week, man?
It was good. It's kind of fun to be able to sit back and kind of watch football from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, fascinating to me because, I mean, it was 3 of the main games that I watched. Obviously, I was interested in TCU and Oklahoma State.
Right.
And but then I also caught a lot of Tennessee, Bama.
Sure.
And then Utah, USC. They just happen to be on at either the same time or a separate window. Combined 138 to 131 in those 3 games, and you have 3 unbeatens go down. So just a 7-point difference, even though there's about 270 plus points scored in those 2 games. And it's all. But anyways, I thought the Big 12 games were.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I thought that Oklahoma State TCU game was interesting. And I tell you what's now happened, Choice, is that, how was my bye week? My bye week suggests to me, after watching Big 12 football and looking at the lay of the land,
mm-hmm.
you have 1 playoff contender right now. That's pretty much it as it stands right now. And it's that they reside in Fort Worth. They have the best chance. Not that it just depends on, there's going to be a lot of other things that need to happen to get like 1 and 2 loss teams in. Not that won't happen. It probably will, but I'm just saying as it stands right now, I know it pains me to say that as much as it does for you to hear it.
Well, I my bias leaks in a lot. I completely admit that. But is it possible for there to be a 6-0 team and me still not buying into them? Because I watched that game and the whole time I'm thinking OSU is clearly the better team. They just let it get away. Yeah,
I mean, I think there's a lot of these teams though, but at some level you have to credit people for just winning and figuring out ways to win. Because I didn't think that their quarterback played great this past weekend, and they still kind of figured out that's like TCU has a guy that Texas Tech lacks, just to localize it again, because Quentin Johnson is as special of a player in the country as I've seen. He is a freak. He will be playing on Sundays next year.
Mm-hmm.
He is, it increases your margin for error when you have guys like that. And he's a game breaker. He's a game changer, however you want to phrase it. And that's kind of what we've been talking about, is you just miss that kind of guy. I think Eric was kind of that guy last year, or kind of coming into his own. I would have loved to have seen what another year here, especially in this offense, what it would have looked like, because he was just somebody that can kind of take over, talking about Eric Izukama. But anyway, so that's kind of my thought there. But I can see that why there's all these teams are flawed, but that's the beauty of it. And that's why it's hard to figure out week to week. But to answer your question, long story short, the bye week was good. It was nice to kind of catch our breath here. And now we got a bunch of home games to finish this thing up, and then you're halfway through. So let's see what you can do with it.
Yeah, 4 out of the final 6 will be home games for the Red Raiders, starting with this weekend against West Virginia. This game is one of those that probably looked, nothing's easy, but at least a little easier a week ago than it does right now. West Virginia coming off of a win against Baylor. How do you view the Mountaineers, Chris?
Well, here's the interesting thing. They started out 0-2. They've won 3 of their last 4.
Mm-hmm.
You started out 2-0 and have lost 3 of your last 4.
True.
Okay, so I think they're flawed like everybody else, but I think they're pretty good. And I think that for them to run as well as they did against Baylor this past week, to run it over 200 yards, that tells you a lot, because Baylor's front is as old and as good as anybody in this league.
Yeah.
And it was a backup running back in Tony Mathis. That's the one. So, and their defense is built very similar to Oklahoma State. They're very good up front. They're deep up front. They're old up front. Questions in the back, on the back end of that defense. So they do give up some passing yards. So they're very similar there. But this is the one quarterback, though, that I'm looking forward to playing from a Red Raider standpoint, just because mobile quarterbacks have given Texas Tech trouble. They do most teams. JT Daniels is not this. JT Daniels is more of a sit back in the pocket, and that's why that running game is so key, because that's how they manufacture those rushing yards. Is traditionally he doesn't tuck it and go.
Sure,
he's not a statue, but I think they're pretty good, and they're probably pretty confident, and they feel like that after a rough start, their season's kind of they're coming in with some confidence, and so I think that's a bit scary. And you need this win. I mean, this is a game you really need to win if you want to try to get to bowl eligible. I just don't want to see what it looks like if you drop to 3-4 and 1-3 in the league, because this is a home game that is crucial. And make no mistake, now that West Virginia beats Baylor, I feel like the pressure is clearly on you. Like the pressure is on you to hold serve at home. It's kind of like the Big 12 basketball race when you're kind of going back and forth and all that. Yeah, I mean, you've got to win your home games here, and this is a game that you need to play well in.
If there's something that's the most glaring level of the last decade or so, your average to below average football years, it's not winning your home games.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
or
what
winning
it is.
or winning the majority of them.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm not saying going undefeated, but you went from a team that would maybe lose 1-2 home games in a bad year to kind of going about 500 or so at home. And that's something that you're right. You have to absolutely win the home games there. So, Level, what do we need to see from the Red Raiders on Saturday against West Virginia to feel like you're going to win that one?
Well, obviously avoiding the mistakes that have plagued you, the turnovers, because if you play clean football, this team's pretty good. And I want to continue to see the effort that we've seen too, the energy. And I would see, and that's what you get in trouble, is that sometimes, they'll be at home, I'm going to assume that they're going to play as hard. That's not always the case. Sometimes that for whatever reason you're flat or you're rusty. I can't explain it. We talk about it till we're blue in the face. It's like one of those things that just happens in sports at times. But I think Baron, if I was guessing, I think Baron probably ends up being the quarterback this week.
Yeah.
I think Tyler Shuck is probably a week away. And so, I think your strength, their weakness kind of thing. I think you can get rid of the ball quick and negate that old defensive line, maybe have a similar game plan to what you did versus Oklahoma State. And hopefully his ankle is better and stays healthy the whole game, because I think if so, that's going to cause West Virginia some problems. And again, that's me kind of speculating and things like that, but that's kind of the way I see it. But no, this West Virginia is not going to give you anything, and they're flawed, but they're competitive, and I think they're coming in pretty confident.
For anyone interested in this kind of thing, Texas Tech opens as a 4.5-point favorite at home. The line has been moving towards Texas Tech. All right, Level, let's go ahead and dive into some questions from the audience. One you somewhat answered there, but it says, do we end up seeing Morton start the rest of the year if he has a good game against West Virginia?
Yeah, well, I would not necessarily say that, no. Okay. I don't. Here's the fascinating thing, Choice, about how this is going to play out, because there's you're worried about this Saturday afternoon and next Saturday afternoon and all the Saturdays coming up, but you have to have an eye on what the off season and next year looks like and all that. Yeah. And I'm not. It's going to be tricky to manage. I just think that if Baron starts, and this may be okay with people, I don't know. And you know what? They may just say, you know what, this was the best thing for us right now. Whatever happens, happens. But if Baron Morton plays well and starts the rest of the season, I bet you see two guys leave, and I bet their names are Tyler Shuck and Donovan Smith. And you couldn't blame them. No, I don't blame him. And and I think that if Shuck were to play, he may come back next year and maybe one of those other guys leaves. But I just that's going to be the difficult thing to try to manage and to see kind of how that plays out, because the decisions you're making here in October are what's going to very much affect your football team next year, because if somebody leaves, make no mistake, you will be going to find a quarterback in the portal.
Yeah.
You're not going to just have one guy or whatever, and then your freshman Jake Strong. I mean, you would, especially if two guys leave, I guess I should say, you're going to be going to find guys in the portal. So anyway, we'll see what this whole thing looks like, but it gives me a headache trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
this is where too many
animal.
good options are a problem, or trying to keep all the mouths fed and and all that stuff.
But we're seeing how important, we've seen, unfortunately, at Texas Tech for a long time, how important it is to have a good backup quarterback. You have to at this point. So, So it's a decision that you have to be careful with. That last question, by the way, was from Preston. This one from our guy Garrett, flipping over to basketball. Good time for it with the bye week. Who is the one guy on the basketball roster no one's talking about, but they should be?
Oh, man. Let me think about that. Well, yeah, it depends on what circles you're in.
Sure. But I guess publicly.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to hedge my answer on this a little bit, just because I don't know if enough people are talking about Harmon and Isaacs. Okay. So I'm going to give you two names, and I'm going to tell you why. I think people have talked about Davion Harmon and Pop Isaacs a bit. However, are they talking about them enough? I don't know. And here's why. You've played the last 3 to 5-ish seasons without a true point guard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now all of a sudden you have two that have dropped in your lap. And I think one that's older and has been through it. He's played in the United Supermarkets arena before as an opponent in Davion Harmon when he was with the Sooners.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's very tough. He's very talkative. He's very quarterback style kind of guy. Yeah. I don't know if he's not going to be a guy that shoots it and punishes you a ton from deep or anything like that. Isaacs can do that, but these are two guys that this is what they are. They're pure point guards. And I think that at times you've kind of gotten in a bind offensively just because you haven't had somebody to run the show. I mean, yeah, a couple of years ago, Matt Mooney tried to do it. You've had Davide try to do it. You even had Culver try. In recent years, it's like you almost let Jamias Ramsey kind of do it. I mean, Mac McClung kind of do it. They're not. None of these people are natural point guards. You had Davion Warren and kind of Adonis Arms and kind of Kevin McCullough last year. This is just not naturally their skill set. You got by with it and you figured out different ways to beat people. But I just think having a true natural point guard will be a difference maker. And again, there's some give and take here. I don't know if you're going to be as good on defense as you were last year. That is a fact. Okay. You're not as long and rangy and athletic as you were last year. Really not even close. But I think having a pure, like a quarterback type guy running the offense at times will certainly pay dividends.
All right, a couple more back to football, and then we'll wrap. Level. This is from Log Raider. Why do we continually bring kickoffs out from 4 to 6 yards deep in the end zone? We don't have anybody that's a game breaker with enough juice to take it all the way. That really changes things when you start from the 25 versus the 15.
It's a question that's been asked since the end of time, right? I mean, I think part of it at times it drives me crazy too. I get it because I generally live life with bird in the hand guy. That's kind of my mentality most of the time, and that's why I'd be a bad gambler just because it's like I'm looking to minimize risk. So if you just tell me, hey, you're going to get it at the 25 every time, I'm probably just going to take it. Thanks for giving it to me. And I didn't even have to work for it. I just have to catch it and tell everybody to leave me alone or let it go to the back of the end zone. I gather they're trying to be aggressive. I gather they're trying to find some hidden yards. I gather they're trying to make the other team cover it as opposed to just giving them a play off. There's different philosophies there. And over time, maybe you do bust one, but you're right. The results would suggest to me right now that you should just take it at the 25. You don't have a game breaker or haven't shown that. at either kickoff or punt returner, really. And so
true.
it's been a while since you've kind of had that. But I think it's just trying to make them cover it, trying to have an aggressive mentality. But those are valuable yards when you get tackled at the 16 or whatever versus the 25. And against Oklahoma State at the end of the game, you got tackled at the 15 and clock, valuable clock time came off.
Yeah.
Whereas if you'd have just said, "Hey, I don't want to do it," you get 9 or 10 extra yards and no time comes off the clock. So, but I think you're just trying to give yourself a chance. That's their philosophy, is being aggressive and again, live or die by it, I guess,
Yeah. This question says, what has happened to Baylor Cup? Seems like he's been MIA since the UT game.
Well, Baylor's been injured for much of his college career. Okay. Mm-hmm. He looks the part. He's got quite the resume. He came in with some pomp and circumstance a little bit. Mm-hmm. This is a kid that's still working on his confidence and trying to get into a rhythm and trying to figure things out week to week. I think that because we don't see these guys catching passes as much, we think they're not really a factor.
Sure.
But I would tell you that Josh Cochran and Zach Kitley, the guys that coach these guys, would tell you they are very involved and have done really well blocking and doing the other things. But we only focus on them when they're targeted or they're catching passes and things like that. But because there's been a few games where the tight ends have just been like non-existent from a receiving standpoint. But mm-hmm. I think that they have gotten better and they've been very involved. And because you put up nearly 600 yards of offense against Oklahoma State. And I think they had a lot to do with that. It's just not a lot of catches there to be had for Baylor or Mason, if I'm being honest. And so that's just part of, again, figuring it out. It's just amazing how many you lead the Big 12 and one of the top teams in the country in throwing the football. And I still feel like you're not super talented, like at receiver and with some of these, because there's not many yards after the catch for you.
Right.
You haven't had these catches where, man, he'd throw it for 12 yards and he busts a tackle and he's gone. You just don't have that dude. Yeah. But yeah, I would love, as much as anybody, I'd love to see these tight ends continue to get acclimated more and more as we go along. And maybe the West Virginia matchup dictates it. I don't know. We'll see.
All right, final one here. With the back half of the season coming up. This one's from Hunter. Level, which game is the easiest one left on the schedule? Which one is the toughest?
Well, right now, it's the easiest answer, okay, to give you is that TCU and Fort Worth is going to be the toughest because they're playing well. They're fast. Yeah. It scares you a bit. They're playing with a lot of confidence, and the fact that it's in Fort Worth.
Still could have a lot of red in that stadium, but
we'll see. As far as the easiest game goes, I'm either going to say it's against West Virginia or Kansas at home.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Kansas, I say that because their Jalen Daniels may still be out.
True.
I don't know what that looks like, and they're starting to kind of come back down to earth a little bit. But I'm maybe going to say West Virginia, and it's not going to be easy just because their quarterback is the one immobile guy that you're going to face.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else has got a runner and an athlete and a dual threat type. JT Daniels is just not that. So it will be a different matchup and maybe a more manageable matchup compared to what some of these other guys are going to give you. But easy. I'm a bit squeamish on suggesting to you that it would be easy. Yeah, karma's undefeated. I'm not going that route.
Yeah, I don't think easy is the right word. Maybe most attainable or most winnable versus least winnable because they're all going to be pretty tough. Yeah, every game left on the schedule is winnable. Every game is losable. So
yeah, you could. I mean, and you won't go 6-0. You won't go 0-6. It'll be somewhere, in the middle there. But the key is it closer to 6 or is it closer to 0? That's what we're trying to.
There's one stat I am ready to throw out the window, and that's the not having a winning Big 12 record since 2009.
But
and do that with a 4-2 record down the stretch.
I know, but you're sitting here at 1-2 right now. And you have faced some of the toughest teams already. Yeah. So, Texas, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State are three of the top 4 teams as it stands right now,
right.
excluding TCU, and so they're in your rearview mirror. But you don't know what Oklahoma's going to look like at the tail end of this thing.
No,
you don't know what Baylor's going to look like in 2 weeks. I mean, that's the scary thing, because they're still very talented.
Right.
It's just buckle up, buddy. Put that chin strap on there, Woodman.
Big 12's as wild as we've seen it, at least 20
Wide
years
open.
or so.
Absolutely.
So, Level was fun, swift,
enjoyed
as
it
usual, and we'll do it again next week, hopefully after a win over the Mountaineers.
Keep hope alive.
For sure. Yeah. That's Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. You've been tuned into the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3. You'll have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3. For more from Lubbock Sports Station, go to doublet973.com.